Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are on episode 194. So I'm mixing things up a little bit this week. I know you did not know the schedule, but I did not plan on talking about today's topic. But I was watching New Heights with my husband. We watch it every single week. We generally on Thursday nights. It comes out on Wednesdays. But we watch it Thursday nights on our TV. We just watch the YouTube channel that way. And we both get a lot of joy out of it. And I was watching their response to Butker, and I was getting really worked up. And my husband was like, I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, they're doing a good job. And I was like, that's it, though. That's exactly it. Like, good men don't get it. And I think y'all do want to get it. And so I was like, I'm totally going to do a podcast episode on this. I was like, I'm going to change the schedule. This is such an important topic. I don't know, depending on how long you've actually been listening to Hustle and Flow, back in 2019, it was episode 104. It was almost 100. It was 90. It was exactly 90 episodes ago. I talked about mentoring in the Me Too era. And that particular podcast got a lot of traction with a lot of companies and law firms because it was shared by women with men who want to be a good ally, who want to do the right thing, but don't always know how. And so it was kind of a teaching moment. And that's my intention for this particular episode. It is not to trash or bash. It is to educate. And hopefully, if it's helpful, I know I have a lot of women who listen and watch, then you can share it with the men in your lives that you know really do want to be a good ally, a good father, a good brother, a good friend, a good husband, because it might be eye-opening for them. So I'm not going to actually talk about the Butker commencement speech because ain't nothing to say. Not worth my time or my energy. Y'all all know how I feel about people who say dumb shit like that, okay? So I'm not addressing that. And the people who listen to my podcast and the men in their lives who are allies, right? Like they're not, like no one needs to be preached at about the nonsense that we heard. But what we do need to discuss, and what I think we can all get a better understanding around, is how do we respond when that happens? Now, depending on the situation, there may not even need to be a response. Now, the moment, I was actually at the Grand Canyon on vacation. The moment that I saw the Butker commencement speech and then was looking at it, I mean, I was livid, right? And I'm immediately talking to my husband about it. And so in that moment, in that private moment, especially if you were a man and a woman that you care about in your life is telling you about what happened, obviously there is that response. And I suspect that every single one of you got that right. Right? Like you're not arguing how big of an idiot Butker was with what he was saying. You're 100% behind the private, personal conversation. Now, could you be in public where there's more of a conversation needed? Possibly, depends on the circumstances. The bigger issue here is what happens when you have a friend or a colleague that does or says something like this. Because Butker is probably not your friend or your colleague, but you absolutely are in situations, conversations where you have a colleague and friend who is saying things that are not just offensive, but oppressive. And what do you do in those situations? Because that is what Jason and Travis was faced with. In Travis's instance, it is his teammate. And in Jason's instance, it is his brother's teammate. And Jason is going to be on ESPN. They do have a podcast, New Heights. And so he still has an interest in this person being in his community. All right. So he might have just retired, but in some ways, it's still kind of a colleague. And people were wanting to know, what's your position? Now, one thing that they could have done was said nothing at all. And in light of what happened and how big of a deal was made about it, I think it was important for them to respond to it and make a statement. It is so easy to just be like, I don't want any part of this. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that an ally can make, is just being like, I didn't say it. I didn't do it. As long as I don't say anything, I can't get into trouble. And I do think there is this belief of, if you say something, and this isn't just for men, this is also for women, for all kinds of different issues that come up, when you are being an ally, right, in a group that you're not in. And so there's this thinking of, well, if I say something, it's going to be wrong. And someone is going to get mad at me. And someone like Heather is going to dissect and take apart everything I'm saying. Therefore, it's best that I just zip my mouth. I hear you, and I get why you might feel that way. I will be honest. I'll have my vulnerable moment here. I have really struggled with what to say and where to speak up related to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Because I have really close friends and clients whom I love dearly, who are Jewish, that are more likely to see Israel's position in a very different light than someone who is not Jewish. And I have a lot of friends, especially those in the Black and brown communities, who may not be from Palestine, but who have faced the same type of oppression and silencing and violence that is often supported by white countries because of the color of their skin. And so they feel very strongly one way. And so I kind of feel like I feel as though I relate to both sides. And then there are certain things that I don't relate to. And it's like, well, if I speak out, I'm going to harm someone. And so I'm not saying that I am the expert on this, but I think we need to be having these types of conversations. And so part of my engaging in the conversation around the Butker Kelce allyship is also to say, I get it wrong too. And there's no perfect way to do it. And yet we still have to try. And I do try to speak up about what I do perceive as genocide and unnecessary violence and starving people in Palestine. And I also understand and see the hurt that was caused by Hamas. And I don't think Hamas and Palestine are the same thing. And my point is, saying nothing is easy. Saying nothing makes you feel safe. Saying nothing makes you feel comfortable. Saying nothing means you cannot offend someone. But my values, and perhaps your values, are that when you see something, you say something. And that you don't just speak up about issues that directly impact you, but issues that impact others. That's part of what allyship is. And so knowing that you're going to get it wrong, knowing that you may offend, knowing that you're always learning and you're always trying to improve, that's hard stuff. It's difficult stuff. And it's not nearly as hard or nearly as difficult as the people in the groups being oppressed. So finding the courage to work through all of that and speak up anyway and learn as you go, knowing that you might offend some people and you might have something to lose. We choose to show up the best we can anyway, in order to be a good ally and in order to try to make a difference. All right, so let's get into what was actually said. Travis shared first, and then Jason shared. And so I'm just going to summarize what they said. This is not a transcript. And if you want the transcript, you can totally just go watch New Heights. It's a pretty short clip. And like I said, I love them. I love the show. So I'm a fan. All right. So Travis said, I've known Butker for 7 to 8 years. I cherish him as a teammate. He is a great person and a great teammate. He treats my friends and family with nothing but respect and kindness. His views, I can't agree with him on any of his views or the points that he made in that commencement speech outside of him loving his family. And then basically he talks about how he grew up with a lot of different people, with a lot of different beliefs, and I shouldn't judge him by his views, especially his religious views. This was what Travis said. Okay. Jason then says, a lot of people like to just respond to comments without ever having met a person. And so it's really helpful to hear what you and what Pat Mahomes and what Andy and the Chiefs have said. Learning about people who actually know them on a daily basis really gives you the information that you need. It was a religious and Catholic speech. I can hear good parts and take that in, and then hear others and disagree with it and keep it out. Like, I don't have to take it all in. And when asked, well, how would you feel if your daughters were in that audience upon graduation hearing that? And he said, if they listen to what he said, then I have failed as a dad. If as their dad, they're sitting there and you let someone tell you that you then have to be a housewife or go do anything else, then you probably weren't going to make it anyway, right? Like if you're going to let someone tell you what to do, then I failed you as a father. Just don't listen. I just don't get the whole fuss, to be honest. Now, he did go on to say, like, I didn't agree with anything that he said. except for it's important to be a good parent. And then Jason did make a hilarious joke. I thought it was funny. I laughed out loud. I appreciated the levity. He said, my wife, she certainly didn't like what he had to say. And I told her to go back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. I appreciated that. I mean, I like a good joke. But then they're both laughing, and Travis says, "We were doing so good. We were killing it." And you weren't doing good. You weren't killing it. And that's what I want to talk about. Okay. All right. So in summary, they are saying, one, Travis is like, I know this person. I have spent a lot of time with this person. He's a good guy. He is a good guy. He treats me with respect. Everyone I introduce him to, he treats them with respect. And then Jason says, that's really helpful to hear. It's helpful to hear from you and Andy and Pat, people who spend time with him on a daily basis. Like, that's really how we should judge the character of a person. And I do think that Pat said something along that, like, I'm going to judge him by the character he shows every single day. Okay, here is the problem with that. Most men who sexually assault women are good guys on a daily basis. Most racists, most sexists, most homophobics who don't just say bad things, but do bad things against those people are good guys on a daily basis. We know this. And like, as women, we know this. Black people, people of color, they know this. LGBTQ people, they know this. But I wonder, based on these comments, do men know this? Do men know this? We are more likely, as women, to be raped and sexually assaulted and killed and physically assaulted by someone we know. It's not someone in an alley or hiding in the bushes. Of course, a stranger can do that. That's not generally what happens. It's generally someone that we know very personally, or someone who is a friend of someone we know very personally. And that is how it happens. I was sexually assaulted in high school by one of my best friend's brothers. He is a good guy. Parents love him. Teachers love him. Outside of what he did to me, he was always really nice and kind and courteous. Treated me like I was his sister. And so going by how someone acts on a daily basis is not actually how we should be judging them. In fact, it is what allows them to get away with what they get away with. I didn't speak out. I didn't tell anyone because he was a good guy. Because he was well-liked. Because he came from a good family. Again, like if you just met him on a day-to-day basis and just looked at his character, he was fine. So when you then think, I'm going to speak out about this, you think I'm not going to be believed because he's a good guy. He has stature. He has respectability. And because they are good guys, it actually makes you question whether or not you did something wrong. This is the society we live in. This is the conditioning that has been imparted upon us since we were very small. And it's not just women, because men are also sexually assaulted. And while women absolutely can and do sexually assault men, it is more likely that another man sexually assaults a man. And similarly, we don't speak out, men don't speak out for many different reasons, but one is because their perpetrator is generally someone who is a good guy. And so, Pat, Travis, Jason, Andy, guys, when you say, I can only judge someone based on how they act on a day-to-day basis, that's not good allyship. And I realize that you probably aren't thinking through what that actually not only means, but the message you are sending to people who are oppressed and harmed by others who you think are otherwise good guys. Speaking of race, I think of the people in the small town that I grew up with and the people who taught me racism, the people who to this day use the N-word. They are deacons of churches. They are on boards in the community. They are stand-up guys. And one of the phrases that I often hear is they would give you the shirt off their back. They would give you the shirt off their back. And they would. They would. If you were in need, they would give you the shirt off their back. They might even help. They probably would help a Black person who was broke down on the side of the road. And at the same time, when they're not around them, they're going to use the N-word and they're going to talk about how the N-word people have taken away jobs and they are basically the demise of our society. I'm going to judge you not based on your day-to-day good guy character. I'm going to judge you based on what you do behind closed doors, behind what you say behind closed doors. This concept that you get the benefit of the doubt if you're a good guy, that basically is how white supremacy and white power works. That's how the patriarchy works. There are not that many guys walking around that it's like, oh, he's a total asshole all the time. No, it would make things, frankly, a lot easier because we would be able to, that's a good guy, that's a bad guy, but that's not how it works. That's not how the oppression works. And so when you say, well, this person is great on a day-to-day basis, you're basically giving them a character reference. You're basically saying, I know they said some really stupid things, but I promise they're a really good guy. And, I think of the lynchings, I'm from the South. And so you think of the lynchings, and do you think that the mobs were a bunch of crazy outlaw rednecks? If you go look at some photos, you'll see people are in their Sunday best. They're the good people who would give you the shirt off their back. So that's what I think about giving an excuse to someone who knows them on a daily basis and who says they've got great character. So the second piece that I really think should have been handled differently is the comment about religion. So Travis said, who am I to judge him by his views, especially his religious views? And then Jason also said, it was a religious and Catholic speech. Okay, first off, I know a lot of Catholic people, and I think that's offensive to Catholicism. Now, granted, I'm an ambitious professional woman, so maybe that impacts the Catholics that I know, but they too are ambitious professional women, and they do not espouse to these beliefs. I was raised Southern Baptist and it wasn't as extreme as it is today, but there have always been the fundamentalist views and the progressive views. And I think that's true of every religion. And so when you've got someone who is espousing fundamentalist views, to basically just give them a pass because it was said under the guise of an extreme fundamentalist religious view is a cop-out. It's a cop-out. I mean, first and foremost, I don't care what your religion is. If you want to oppress women, if you want to oppress those in the LGBT community, if you want to oppress Black people or people of color, I'm going to speak out about your religion. You can have that religion all day long, but I'm going to call it for what it is, which is views handed down from the men in your church, not from your God. I don't buy for 2 seconds that your God is a sexist, racist, homophobic. I don't. I think the men in your church who are leaders have passed that down, and I am going to say that I think it's bullshit and I disagree with it. Does that mean I'm going to keep you from practicing your religion? No. But to think that my opinion no longer matters or that I cannot espouse my opinion based on the fact that you're claiming it's your religion? No. We still need you to speak up. We still need you to speak up. When you let people off the hook because they said it under the guise of religion, you're not being an ally. You're still supporting them and backing them and saying it doesn't matter. Similarly, when we think of all of the young people, and not just young people, who have been sexually harmed by clergy, surely we wouldn't say, well, this is Catholic, this is a religion. I mean, who am I to get involved or have an opinion? And if you're thinking, oh, whoa, Heather, that's quite different. The sexual assault of one person versus, the verbal assault of another are two different things. It's actually very connected. It's very connected. When you have a society that protects and says, well, this is religion and this is what they believe, and we should give credence to that, it actually builds up the power of people doing bad things in those religions. You got to speak up. You got to speak up. And then the whole part of I'm not going to judge someone by their views. When you don't judge someone by their views, I'm judging you. Why are you not going to judge someone by their views? The statement was made, we all have to, we play with others with lots of different beliefs, as in the NFL. Well, I mean, we have to do that in our jobs too. Anyone who works out in public, like corporate America, deals with the same thing every day. And for the most part, we do in general, especially depending on where you live, whether it's your church or whether it's your family or community. We're all familiar with the concept of having to work with people that we don't agree with. And so, they said we put our differences aside, and that's the beauty of team sports. We find a way to work together. I'm good with all of that. Good with all of that. I get that you're still going to show up and play football with them. I get that you're still trying to get another Super Bowl win. And I think the reason you're not saying what you really feel and the reason you're not being the ally that you could be is because you're worried you have something to lose. And whether that is creating division within that team, whether it is, well, if there's all of this divisiveness, like how can we go win another Super Bowl when we really want a three-peat? That's really convenient for you. And being a good ally is not about convenience. and it's not about trying to protect your personal interests. And so we're not saying that you should not be kind. We're not saying that you can't still be in a space with other people. But when you use that as your excuse, that's a problem. And, I love the NFL. Oh my God, I love the NFL. And they've been problematic in a lot of different ways for a lot of different things, domestic violence, so many things. And we've got to speak up, even if they're our teammates, even if they're good guys on a daily basis and day in, day out on the field. We have to speak up. And you don't have to. You don't have to speak up. But if you want to be a good ally, you've got to speak up. You've got to speak up. The other thing that Jason said that I would briefly like to address is about his daughters. When he said, if they listen to any one person make a stupid comment and they let that impact them, then I have failed as a dad. And I would want Jason to know if he were listening, and any man out there who might feel the same way, I would simply want you to know that whether or not your daughter succeeds and fulfills all of her ambitions is not based on whether or not you imparted in her belief that she could do anything. Because she is going to face not just one Butker, but many Butkers. And for those of us who are very strong-willed and very determined and didn't really think that we would have to deal with sexism in the workplace or that it would in any way impact our career trajectories, it's actually very difficult to go through that. And what they're going to need is a father who can actually give them good advice and not just say, ignore them, because it actually does impact their career and it does impact their day-to-day. And when people in their organizations don't just say that, but act in certain ways, and they will, they're going to face so many hurdles, and it's going to be so distressing and disappointing. And to hear that choir, not just at a commencement speech, but when it's your boss, when it's a partner and a colleague, it becomes a heavy load, and it does wear you down over time. And if women could be anything they wanted to be just based on whether or not they believed they could, we would have equality. And I think we all know, and we don't have equality. And it has nothing to do with a woman's determination in ignoring the Butkers in her life. And so I hope you know that there are many ways to continue to be a good father when those voices do get loud and the actions that they deal with from all of those good guys out there whose character is good by everyone they know, maybe even you, that they're going to need a lot more support than just being told to believe in themselves. Okay, 2 more quick things and we will wrap this up. First, I just want to say that it's not just Butker, right? Okay, so his jersey sales, not only did they shoot up, they sold out after his commencement speech, and they were even higher than Kelce and Mahomes. So as you can see, it was not just one random person at one random Catholic commencement speech. It was supported and applauded by many men and women who are not Catholic, who weren't at that commencement speech, who don't know him on a personal level on a daily basis, who felt validated and wanted to support. And that is why it is so important to speak up. Because when we just give them a pass, it is validating and it is supporting all of the people out there who 100% agree with what he said because they are sexist assholes, not because they're Catholic. Also, there's a lot of really interesting research coming out that says Gen Z is more against feminism than boomers. And that's like a whole interesting thing. So, Andrew Tate, asshole Andrew Tate, has 8.7 million followers, most Gen Z. And, he's constantly talking about many of the things that Butker talked about. And because Gen Z gets most of their news and commentary from social media, it's really frightening. And so we need more men speaking out. We need more men giving not a pass, but an actual speaking out and explaining why that is so fucking harmful to say. Women are losing their rights left and right. And so we need our allies to take everything seriously. And speak up and speak out. If you are going to speak up and speak out, make sure you've got our back 100%, not just kind of. So, the statement was made, we were killing it. We were doing such a good job. And like I said, my husband thought they were because they were taking the middle of the road. They both said 100%, I don't agree with anything he said. And that's what then made them feel like they did a good job. I don't agree with any of that shit. But I'm not going to judge him. And that's where you lost us. That's where you lost us. We do need you to judge him. We don't need all of the excuses. We don't need all of the excuses. And that's what we got. That's what we got. And the reason I think you did the middle of the road thing and the reason why you made the excuses is the same reason why men do all the time when they hear and see bad shit. It's uncomfortable. You might have something to lose. It's definitely inconvenient. You don't want to offend. And you still got to work with these people. They might still be your friends. But if you want to be a good ally, if you want to man up, you put yourself in the same position that the women, Black people, the LGBTQ community deal with each and every day, because we don't get to opt out of that. We just have to deal with it. And so we don't get that privilege of getting to toe the middle of the road. What I would have loved to have seen actually from Jason and Travis, if you're like, well, what did you want them to say? I would have loved for them to have said, I've known this guy 7 to 8 years, and I did not know that that was how he felt. And I was actually shocked. I thought that a lot of the things that he said was really harmful, and it was uneducated. It was misdirected. And I think that women, especially now more than ever, need to be given support in pursuing whatever it is that they want to pursue and not be judged for the decisions that they make with regard to having a family and with regard to whether or not they want a job. I think it is important now more than ever that we support those in the LGBT community so that they know that not only are they loved, but they are safe from harm, because as a society, we are going to protect them and not judge them, harass them, and attack them. And will I still play football with him? Yes, of course. That's the world we live in. We have to work with people every single day. Will I always be kind to him? Yes, of course. That's how I was raised. But do I agree with what he said? And am I shocked by what he said? Yes. Yes, I am. Period. End of story. That's what it would have looked like to have been killing it. Okay, one last thing. I am not turning on the comments for YouTube on this because people say some crazy things on YouTube. And they've been especially kind of wild with like my Taylor and Travis podcast episode. So it's one thing to kind of come after me, and sometimes people make sexist comments, and I leave that because like I'm in that group. But when you start bringing your homophobic hate and your racist hate, you're not welcome on my page. And I have to do a lot of blocking, and I suspect that this could bring out a lot of trolls. And so I ain't got the time to be blocking that stuff, but I do appreciate you. And subscribe to Hustle and Flow. And you can comment on other episodes, unless I end up having to turn those off too. But anyway, have a great day, and we will be back next week with our regularly scheduled content. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.